Welcome to After Hours Theology Club, where two theology profs, Jason
and Joel,
kick back after class for informal, thought-provoking chats about faith, scripture, and life. Whether you're a fellow theology nerd or just curious about big questions, pull up a chair and join the conversation.
this is the quotation that I am going to drop us all into the middle of. Ready?
Hold on. We're going to talk about this later. We'll come back to it, but go ahead. Joel is reading an article about AI. Katie,
You know what? This is going to be like, you know how at the beginning at some podcasts, they like have a clip from like later in the show and they like played at the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. Ready? But even though they had volunteered to be taught by an avatar, Robin said they still felt duped. They wanted to know what a real professor thought of their work, not a machine.
Okay, so that's Canadian graduate level
Theological education. Yeah, that's right.
So welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, what are we?
We're going to talk today about what's theological about theological education. I sent Joel a LinkedIn article of CBC News about Katie Divinity College.
Yep.
Who, one of their professors, the president, led a course entirely done on AI.
On AI. So it was like AI taught, AI graded, AI, the syllabus wrote AI. Or sorry, AI wrote the syllabus, obviously, like, right? The whole thing.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard, like, this is a live response to what I just read.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So welcome to 2.6.
2.6 After Hours Theology Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are recording. This is July 24th, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to, like, I feel like you're right. We should timestamp these so they can be like, they didn't hear about this thing, you know, and then they'll be able to date it. So, yeah. Because I just feel like every day something crazy happens.
Well, by the time we air this, Briarcrest.
For me.
This might be an AI episode. We are
we could be AI. So if we suddenly switch to speaking German or something.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And how are you doing?
Well.
Yeah. You're good? You've had a good summer?
So far, we got a couple of weeks coming up. I've been out back and forth to Ontario doing some military chaplaincy stuff. So that's all done.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy some time with my wife, and that will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My nickname for Ontario is Ontariable. Do you feel that way about it or not really? It's like it's a happy place.
Well, it was home for me.
Yeah, that's what I need. Like, so you don't have that perspective.
No, I feel like it's the world of like road rage and high populations of people in Toronto.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it as unterrible.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
The bugs are okay. The humidity.
Humidity was bad when I was out there a couple of times, and air conditioning broke 3 times. I was there for like 8 days, and the air conditioning broke 3 times.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but the military is getting a huge cash infusion, I think. So
right on. Yeah, Carney's just gonna get the machine going. Hey, yeah. Oh wow, all right.
Yeah. How about you?
Your
summer?
Summer's been going well. Yeah, we went camping, which was fun. I was going to say we stayed in a tent, but we didn't. I slept in my van. Wow, it was great. Yeah, it was awesome.
Your family slept in the tent?
The family slept in the tent. I slept in the van. I make no pretenses. I just didn't get the kind of the rugged genes from anyone in my family. Okay. So glamping is more my style. And if wanting that, I'll just sleep in the van.
So in the van, do you put down the back seats and sleep in the
Totally. And like throw an air mattress in there and then like... Oh yeah, like it's great. There's no bugs. There's no, like it's fine. The temperature was perfect.
And then you wake up in the morning and there's all that steam on the inside.
You know what? There was no sales in. There's a little bit for sure, but it wasn't bad. I was like, this is better than being in a tent. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know, man. At 42, I'm just like, I'll sleep in the van. That's right with me. So great. Yeah. So no, it's been a good summer and good weather. A little bit of smoke. We're not a fan of that, but no, other than that, it's going really well. So
good.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready to jump in?
I'm definitely ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Joel and I were talking, and I was like, let's talk about theological education. That's an area of interest for me, for sure. And so...
and it's germane. I mean, it's what we do a little bit here in our roles at the college and the seminary.
Yeah.
We're educators, but theological educators in particular, right?
Totally.
Both you and I teach in the discipline of theology. So
yeah,
it's a topic close to home.
Okay, so let's start with what's theological about theological education?
Sure, I love that.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that in your question, it's kind of like, okay, you've got something called education, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Right, and then you got theological education.
Okay.
Right. So the modifier here, what's the work doing? Right.
Yeah.
So is it Is it just teaching theology?
Yeah.
Right? Is it the way that we educate? Right? Is it the particular philosophy that goes behind education? Like, right? Like what's driving our education that way? So, like if I was just going to off the cuff it, theological education. Yeah. Like I'll just give you right off the top. I'd be like, yeah, well, that's education that is, teaching in theology or at like a seminary, right? Like, what do you think? Is that workable or?
Yeah, I think my sense is that in theological education, the disciplines of theology, biblical studies, ministry, those are all going to be aspects of that theological education, probably.
Right.
And yes, it would probably, there'd be an intersection between the study of God and the scriptures, and that would somehow inform and be integrated into the curriculum.
Yeah, I love that. I've got another one I want to add, though. Okay, so would there not be some aspect of like personal or spiritual formation that would need to happen there too?
What do you think?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because it does seem to me that, like theology, ethics, right, is sort of an instrumental branch of theology, and sort of how we do our theology matters to the theology that we're doing, I would think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you raise that, because traditionally, so Protestant and evangelical theological education is primarily about academic or practical matters.
Right.
Whereas Catholic theological education, there's actually 4 pillars. So spiritual, pastoral, human, and intellectual.
Wow.
So if we kind of parse that out, I think you're exactly what you're saying. If we even think about our own experience here, it's like actually I think primarily driven through the college, I think as well, the academy has been latching on to this concept of discipleship.
Right.
We talk about education of disciples.
Yeah.
But discipleship almost is a bit of like an extracurricular thing.
Right.
Like,
I
like
see.
it's kind of like we're trying to figure out how do we disciple students.
Right.
This is, I think, that formation that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily think about it so much academically.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's almost like we outsource the discipleship to like student, like student development or whatever, right? But like, but in the classroom, that's the learning, right? Like, okay,
it's like chapels,
right?
The chaplain, is kind of overseeing that area,
right?
Whereas like professors, I don't know, do you and I think about how to grade students on whether they're becoming more gentle?
I mean, isn't that the thing? Like, I almost feel like we're I don't know if it's like sort of unconsciously communicated that like you can't do that, right? Like, I mean, you can't evaluate spiritual growth because, well, maybe number one is it's really hard to actually quantify, like how do you tell?
Yeah.
And then number two, it seems like how would we know like what's really going on in someone's heart? Like, I don't know.
Totally.
So it does seem like, it's one of those things where, I'm not always sure a student is morally formed, when they're graduating, but nevertheless, they get their degree and away they go.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I guess the criteria by which you use to grade a paper is certain, like there's standards of writing.
Right.
There's,
Chicago.
Thesis and all of those sorts of things. Are there not those same conventions when it comes to just being a good human?
Right. Yeah. Like, would you say like fruit of the spirit type stuff?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or don't, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Like, I guess when you think about children, we discipline children if we're trying to help them to become more like, sure. I mean, couldn't we do the same with like adults or like, hey.
One suggests that we could. Yeah. But wait, like, I just feel as though like, okay, so when you bring up the idea of like the Catholic model, and I don't know, I'm a learner in all of this, so this is great. I love it.
There's something called the Program for Priestly Formation.
PPS.
Yeah, the Program for Priestly Formation.
They're like the army; they acronymize everything.
Yeah. Program for Priestly Formation. Yeah.
Right.
And it is there, like you can read about it. Yeah, you can. It basically lays out how do you form a priest.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a curricula. It's an agenda.
Like that to me is like that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I just wonder, I'm like, is some of that connected to like how they view vocation and like what priestly ministry is, and you know what I mean? Like, do we not like? I wonder if we even really have the same apparatus for like discerning a call. I don't know. Right? Like it just seems to me to be a different environment, but
Entirely different.
yeah, yeah. What do you see as being like the I mean, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but like the strength to that maybe approach,
Yeah.
you know, not putting down the evangelical Protestant approach necessarily, but like what do you see as being like, okay, yeah, they're doing something that's different or that's like yeah.
I think there's a few things. I think they take all of those categories and areas very seriously.
Right.
So, I think, like even the human, they have human as one of their four pillars, right?
Right.
They don't just expect you to be able to pray well,
Right.
or to be able to, be able to lead people in worship. They also require you to be a well-formed human being,
Right.
so that you, people see you and trust you and understand you as a person of wisdom,
Right.
which isn't synonymous, I don't think, with somebody who can lead well in prayer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think just by classifying those as separate things, right?
Right.
And you might be able to lead a Eucharist, like, you might be able to lead that kind of liturgical ceremony very, very well.
Right.
Which is another element.
Yeah.
Right? There's a pastoral, or be able to sit with somebody as they're dying.
Right. Yeah.
That's, is a different category.
Totally it is. Totally it is.
Whereas I think as evangelicals, we tend to think we're here, and this gets into a bit of like a thing about, for me, the term training, we use that a lot.
Right. Yeah.
Training is probably more about the practice,
right? Okay.
We train them to do certain practices well,
right?
But it doesn't necessarily mean their heart is going to be formed,
right? I see.
So I think that's another aspect of it, is that like we can train people, and I think traditionally evangelicals have said we need to train people, we need to get them on the mission field. All they need is the gospel, right?
Right.
You just need to give them the word,
right,
and let the Spirit do the rest.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. There's a propulsion there,
right?
But I think there's maybe a neglect of of the, let's take some time to.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. Like, I wonder how much of it connects to like what our understanding of salvation is, right? Like whether there's some immaterial part of us that needs to be corrected and then evacuated, or if it's the whole person that's being saved. And when I say saved, like how education is itself a humanizing, I would even say saving endeavor, right? Like it's bringing to fullness that which is sort of latent in its being. But how were you, like, when you talk about your own theological education for a minute, like where were you educated theologically? What did you find was like, that worked, or like what was like, I was,
so I went to Bible college, but in my high school years, I had a mentor, and I think I've talked about him before, that he would invite my friends and I over to his house, and he would sit with us, and we would banter around all kinds of questions about the Bible, those sorts of things. So there's a few aspects of my journey. So we went on a mission trip. Exactly. So that was with my pastor and my youth leader and a bunch of guys from, it just happened that they're all guys. But that was formational in that, we're having this cross-cultural experience.
Totally.
And, seeing the faith of the Jamaicans that enlivened something else. So I think that formation for me, well beyond the academic side, started with this kind of like hunger, curiosity that was quenched by this older man who was happy to engage with us, challenge, and bring the scriptures to bear in his own experiences, right? So, and I think that is a part of probably evangelical tradition, but it's also part of that Catholic formation, right? Like you're actually with a mentor or a mentoring group of older senior, priests or whatever, right? That are going to help you. So I think that's part of it. And then the educational journey, going to Bible college, I learned the traditional disciplines of like theology and biblical studies and ministry and
totally. So in your experience of formation, like, it sounds like you had a positive experience with this mentor. Like, what about where, like, I guess, is it just a trust the process thing? Or like, what if you're with a mentor and you're like, I don't really know about that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what about like,
well, this is where I think in some ways, like I joke about how he's a cult leader. Like, because you're right. Like if you stay, I think that's part of the challenge, is that if you just stay with the same person or in the same line, and you don't expand, right? There's a foundation that's laid, but then you have to expand.
Right.
You have to come to an understanding of how other people think and how traditions, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful for, I went to my Bible college, but then I
Right.
go to a Baptist seminary or a divinity college, and then I ended up studying in a Roman Catholic institution for my PhD, right?
Yeah.
So there's that kind of had that formation early on, but then my perspective is broadened out.
Yeah.
I think that's such a critical.
Oh man, right? Yeah. What does the Bible say? Like there's wisdom in many counselors, right? Or just that a plurality of sort of role models and even serves as a check and balance amongst themselves, right? We can kind of see how those different ways are put into relief against each other. But,
Exactly.
Yeah. So with theological education, then, like one thing I've struggled with in being in, so the seminary at Briarcrest is a little bit different in that, like it's a seminary, right? Like, and so that of course comes or links that idea of a seed bed, right? This idea of planting and growing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like the word ministry and seminary tend to sit a little more comfortably with one another. At the college, we talk a lot about liberal arts and like theological education. So like, what about like, is there theological education still happening when you're teaching something like business or you're teaching something like psychology? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
It's interesting. So I think the traditional approach would be that, so in the Catholic system, there's this kind of orientation toward you take your undergraduate time and you learn about philosophy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the Catholic tradition. You begin with philosophy and then you enter theology.
So awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Philosophy, then theology, and kind of formation. Whereas in Protestant traditions, it's typically there's a liberal arts beginning, and then you go to seminary and you learn theology.
Yeah.
So there's this assumption that you're coming with this already, but I don't think there's ever this assumption. I guess in some ways, if you go back, everyone kind of believed in God in Western.
Sure. Well, yeah.
So that would kind of be infused, but I don't think it's the same as like what we traditionally as evangelicals maybe try to do, and that is let's put scriptures into business principles or whatever that. And maybe maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe that's not exactly what's happening, but sometimes I think we try to like Christianize certain business practices by linking them with what we might find in the scriptures, and they're not necessarily meant to be.
Yeah. That's like that phenomenon. Are you familiar with? Okay, I should be careful because I'm pretty sure it's fine. But have you heard of like Jesus juking?
No.
Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay. I just need to look up what a Jesus juke is because, it was like, okay, good. This is good. So what is a Jesus juke? It was a term coined by Christian author John Acuff in 2010 on his blog Stuff Christians Like. The word juke is a term used in sports, referring to a deceptive action in which a player moves one direction, then suddenly shifts another direction. And so like, whatever. Acuff describes a Jesus juke as happening when somebody turns a light conversation into something serious and holy. An example of a Jesus juke can be seen in this conversation. Friend 1, I can't believe I spent 6 hours watching that show. Friend 2, what if you spent 6 hours in prayer instead? And it just made me think about like, right? Because like sometimes like, so in business, like if I'm teaching a business class, right, and I'm talking about the principle of saving, and I talk about like interest and compound interest and things like that. And then I finish the lecture by being like, but you know what, guys, who's the real savior is Jesus Christ. And I like talk about, you know what I mean? Like, and that's sometimes how theological education in those other disciplines comes across to me, right? Like,
totally.
Where it feels like, we're just exporting or importing these alien principles to kind of make it Christian-y and then kind of baptize it and then just be okay with that, and that's always felt a little unsatisfying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, and I think there's a difference between, and maybe we could talk a bit about like, what's the difference between Christian education and theological education? Because I think there's an aspect of, we can try to Christianize things.
Right.
Or we can try to think theologically about them, right? So in some ways, it's like,
talk about that difference. That's really.
I'm going to try to Christianize this business course, for example.
Right.
And forgive us if you're a business student.
Yeah. We know nothing.
I can say, okay, I'm going to try to kind of like baptize this into Christian language or ideas or perspective. instead of saying, let me bring those business concepts and think theologically about them,
Right.
and ask, do they make sense from a paradigm of like who Christ is and how Christ walks with us, how he's designed us to be as humans to live in this world, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's maybe a difference, and there might be some things that are like, yes, this is true, but there might be other things that are like, actually, this is leading to, so for example, if a business principle is about shareholders and how you need to, like as a business leader, you need to appease the shareholders because, they basically are holding your company together by investing in it, right?
Yeah.
What does Jesus say about that? Right. Instead of saying, how might the Bible speak?
Right. I see. Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good.
Money
That's good. I like that because like it seems to imply a little bit more of like a fructive or generative process, like where we're even if I could use the word like imagining, right? Like what does this look like, within a Christian paradigm, etc. Whereas like the Christianizing might be more of the like, like you just got the apparatus of the framework and you're just trying to slot it in, right? Like the other one just seems to be a little bit more capable of producing, deeper reflection in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's transition to this question around the church and Christian education. What's your experience as you think about church, Christian education? Do you have experience, or do you have things that pop to mind when you think about that?
The thing that immediately popped to mind was Sunday school.
Okay.
Like,
You go to Sunday school?
Well, so when I was young, for sure, and like it definitely had flannel graph and stuff, which was awesome. And like, I mean, but that was like, it was purely like Bible stories, right? It was just like, I mean, the one that comes to mind is Noah and the Ark.
Yeah.
And I'll admit to like, that's tough because it is like, you're getting the story, but like you're getting a very particular, like, right? Like it's a vehicle to deliver a kind of moralism often, right? And so so I remember that. And then I just remember like adult Sunday school was kind of similar in that it was like, I mean, it's Bible content, right? Like that's really the core. I did have one pastor who I admire greatly. He actually really, I don't know if it'd be fair to say took me under his wing, but I think he just saw like I enjoyed teaching and he invited me to teach with him.
Okay.
Yeah. And he wanted to teach Dallas Willard's Divine Conspiracy. And then I read that book and like I really had a hard time with it. I don't know how old I would have been, probably in college. And it just, to me, it was like such a like, blew my mind.
Absolutely.
But like those are my experiences with Christian education though. And then coupled with like at home, like Christian education, like, so my dad was the pastor, right? Of the church. So some of that would carry over into the home, which again was a lot of like Bible content. So, like devotions and memorizing books of the Bible and stuff like that. That's what I think of.
Yeah. Mine's similar, like flannel graph, Christian education. I think about like a whole departments in a church, typically younger children being a Christian education, program. There'd be curriculum.
Okay. Yeah.
David C. Cook. I remember there books that teachers would get, and they use a flannel graph.
Totally.
Deal. My question is, why don't we have, like, I guess maybe in schools, like in seminaries, colleges, we might have Christian education departments, but why not theological? Like, why don't we have theological education in the church? Like, I think that, so it's almost like there's only some people that do theological education,
but everyone does the Christian education. That's good.
What's up with that?
Wow. I've never ever thought about that.
Okay.
One thing I encounter regularly with students is a suspicion actually around theology, like, which is to me paradoxical, like, because I think I've just, I've probably just hung around the, this theology world too long that I just sort of forget that, like, like people who don't have exposure to it, I think are sometimes suspicious because of maybe past experiences with theology, right? Where it was used as a cudgel or was not a healthy, life-giving thing for them. It could also be like a poverty and understanding of the word theology. Like what even is that? Like, and I mean, like, isn't that, so I have students do an assignment, which is called Thinking About Theology. And it's just like them reflecting on like, what is theology? How do we do it? Etc. And I have them read a book. And almost like to a T, every student just talks about how, like, wow, learning that theology is for everyone and that like theology is just actually something that we do naturally is, is sort of news to them, right? And I was sort of like, oh yeah, wow, I guess that is like, we don't really talk about that. Right. So yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know what I'm sure there's good reading or like writings about what happened, but it seems as though theology has been parsed out to an elite group,
right?
And therefore, and essentially, it's talked to it being used as a cudgel. And I wonder if in the church theology is used as like this doctrine,
right?
That kind of is transcendent and is only to be used by those who know,
right?
Whereas Christian education. Like everybody can kind of play in that world, in that sandbox.
Yeah.
But not everybody. And I think as a result, we have people showing up saying, "I don't know what theology is.
Right.
I'm nervous about it."
Right.
Instead of saying, if we're like, "Hey, we're going to talk about Christian education," people are like, "Okay, like, it's C9,
right? Yeah.
So in my mind, I would love to see in the church, a transition toward we're going to all things theological education,
right?
So that it becomes less scary, right?
Do you think so? Have theologians brought this on themselves a little bit too? Like, what do you think?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, say more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways it's like there's this kind of like fear of doctrinal slide or whatever. And so if everyone's allowed to play in that lane, then,
all bets are off. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But as a result, I think the question becomes, well, who's allowed to do those tweaks? Who's allowed to ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have to rise to a certain level and you only get let in once you get a certain point, you're not really...
Right. Man, that's powerful. There's a theologian, she's a Catholic theologian named Margaret Farley, I think, and she wrote a book called Just Love, which was, I think it was sort of her effort within Catholic social teaching to sort of re-look at questions around human sexuality. But she asked this very question, which was like, why is it that theology is for, the bishops in Rome, but like not the person who lives in the barrios, or whatever, right? Like just everyday people. And then I think addressing that very thing, right? So that if we let everyone do this, then what's going to happen? Right. But I'm hearing you say like, we don't need to worry about that. Don't we need to worry about that? Because like, here's my thing. Like, well, I don't know. This is where I want to be changed, because it is like, sometimes I struggle because like and you and I are different in how we educate. And this is why I love learning from you. But it's like, so sometimes I feel like, no, students, like you need like you need training before you can start just doing theology. I realize I'm talking against myself now, but I sometimes feel that way, right? Because it's like, well, no, if you don't understand, like, then you're going to make a mistake and then wind up in, worshiping God wrongly or something, right? Like, I don't know. Like, So I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's true. For sure, that's true. But I also think in some ways that probably is simply an intellectual, like you're only thinking about academic or intellectualism, right? Because we don't say the same thing of like, hey, until you can be gentle, you can't really, you know what I mean? Or you, until you learn how to love, not allowed to like, and it's like, no, of course not. And why are those things divorced from theology?
Right. Oh,
like,
man.
Like, what?
I didn't expect to be outed so violently in this podcast. But no, for sure.
I think let's go back to, I really like what Dan Alshire says. He's a former Association of Theological Schools executive director.
Okay.
He's a historian,
and the association is what they accredit our seminary. Just so you know what AHTC.
So he wrote about theological education in a book, and one of the things he says is this is how he would define theological education. He says it's the development of a wisdom of God and the ways of God, fashioned from intellectual, affective, and behavioral understanding, as evidenced by spiritual and moral maturity.
Oh my God.
Relational integrity, knowledge of the scripture and tradition, and the capacity to exercise religious leadership.
So that's, how come he didn't say it's a parchment on your wall that's framed like that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive.
I think he's trying to capture both the Catholic, the Protestant tradition,
right,
and being able to say, look, if we're going to do theological education, it is not just an intellectual or an academic discipline. It also requires us to become wise humans. Right. It also requires us to become knowledge of the scriptures, tradition, but also like to be more mature, relationally mature. I really like that. Okay, I don't have a show yet.
You go, no, it's good. I'm keeping an eye. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, there's a couple questions I want to.
Oh, I've got so many questions for you.
Okay, I want to get to the AI one, but we'll save that one.
Okay.
But do you have a question you want to ask? Right?
Well, okay. So I wanted to be like, the problematizer in me is like, we don't believe that. Like, we don't educate this way.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even just looking at how much time in our curricula is dedicated to spiritual formation.
Yeah.
We have one court. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to like, I shouldn't criticize here. I guess I'm just trying to say it. But like, but I see it. It's not just a breakfast thing. I think it's like a church thing. I think it's even just how I was formed and educated, right? Like, it just like that fully orbed, even the affective, right?
Yeah.
The way that we hold our feelings, our emotions, the way we move through the world, like that was just totally not there, you know? Like,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my question is like, what's the mechanism by which we educate that way? Because I'm given 75 minutes in the seminary, maybe, you know, different, I've got a week, right? How am I, you know, like, what do I do? Yeah.
Okay, so let's take it to, because I think this is relevant where Anderson and Hansen have written a book called Theological Education, and they're talking about competency-based theological education, in which they argue the mission of the theological school is the mission of the church.
Okay. The mission of the theological school is
the same as the church.
Okay.
So the theological school is simply in service to the church.
Okay.
So, because I think what it gets to is what I was going to say is, I only have 75 minutes. I only have a week, right? The pastor would say, I only have 15 minutes. I only have half an hour, 45 minutes to do for a sermon, right?
Yeah.
That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's probably a problem that spans, yes, you're right, the church. Like this concept of what is formation.
Right.
I mean, the church, like at least here, we give grades for people that are doing well or poorly on their assignments. Yeah, get grades in the church. Like, does anybody ever come alongside you in the church and say, "Hey, you know, I heard you speaking to that person. I think you could speak.
Wow,
like, I think you could speak in a better way, right? Or I saw you acting in that way, right? Like maybe we do, but I also think we're so disconnected.
Pretty disconnected.
That we don't. I mean, I think I'm doing a bit of work with the Free Methodist Church, and there's a lot of talk about Wesley and his class system and like how he would have people get together. You've done some work in Wesley, or people get together and they share their what's hindering your soul. We have students that you want to disclose, right? Yeah. So I think in that context, there's a freedom to be able to grade, in some ways. Yeah. Say, hey, I think you got a failing grade, right? We don't do that, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a result, the human formation is we're left to our own.
Yeah. So is the failure is a strong word, but is the failure here one of leadership where the parties responsible for education have abdicated their responsibility? Is the failure in the I'll just say laity, just to create a picture here, but where we've believed a lie about church, where it's like, I just go on my Sunday and I pay my tithe and I let the sermon, kind of wash over me, and then I good for another week. Like, where do you see the failure?
What do you think?
I would love to. I do want you to answer it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the meme "Why not both" comes to mind. Like I see it. So, and I point to myself as a failure in leadership, where, like I've largely just viewed it as, did you get the facts right? And then what you do and how you live those facts out is your free responsibility as a human being, but I'm actually not related to it, right?
Yeah.
So I see that in my life, and I see my life as a parishioner, where it's like, sometimes it's just like, this is what I do, like, and like I have also found it really hard to find males in particular, but role models, mentors, teachers, guides, even while I believe that God has actually placed a number of men in particular in my life. And I say men just as a man, right? Wanting that leadership of what does a godly, wise man look like, I believe there have been people, right? So I'm not saying there were none, but it's hard. So that's my thoughts. What do you think?
It's hard for me to diagnose like a system.
Yeah, sure.
But I think, I mean, a lot of it is it comes through our the way we understand education. Yeah. And that it has been primarily intellectual. Right. And we've left kind of the human formation to the family. Right. For the most part. Right. So families don't typically, again, this is just typical,
Yeah.
think, don't typically think more about the academics. They get back to the school system.
Right.
And the human formation happens in the family.
Right.
And I think probably from Christian perspectives, we probably tend to see that similarly.
Yeah.
And church, I don't even know, like, even human formation, whether that's left.
Right.
It depends probably on the church or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, we do, the domain of the school or an educational institution is really primarily intellectual or academic.
Yeah. You know, to share a personal story, I think one of the schools that I want to say formed me the most, but actually it probably didn't. It probably just had the most impact on me on what we're talking about. And that was actually a Regent college.
Yeah.
And it was partly because, like, I think Regent has a reputation for being a school that really does formation well in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it was, so the things that I think formed me the most were beauty there. Like, I don't know if you've been to Regent, like if anyone has a chance to go, I forget if it was like a newsletter or something. They call it Under the Green Roof, but basically it's just this, like, it's this huge, it just feels like this expansive, just beautiful space. And like that, there's an art gallery in it, which, like, to me, every time a new exhibit went, like, I would just go and just take in the art, you know, and like the people there just, like, were much more about, like, I think it was every Thursday there's like soup and buns, and it was like it was almost like a moral law, like you just went and did that, like, I mean, but it's just like, right, like it just felt so, I now can tap into that feeling I had there, which was much more affective and spiritual than it was intellectual. And that's like, and intellectual, Regent's a powerhouse intellectually too, but it just was, right, that was happening really well there in some important ways for me. But
I think like, as Aristotle talked about, it's the concept of impulturation, right? You get absorbed into this community, and you are shaped and formed by that. I long for this place to be like that. And then, I mean, that's partly why we did our retreat. We're trying as much as possible, because the system that we have at Barcus and seminary, it's not conducive to that, right? You'll come in, they do their week-long course, or they now do it online, and it's difficult to have that human interaction, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, it really changes fundamentally what's going on there.
Yeah.
It was probably on X or Twitter or something that I saw this, so it's not a thought that's original to me, but somebody had pointed out that, like, it was like the Greek philosophers, I mean, I'm sure among others, who sort of developed this peripatetic school of teaching philosophy, where literally they just walk around and talk philosophy.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And like, and if you read like Plato's like Republic and stuff, like it's sweet, because it's just guys hanging out talking philosophy. And I mean, obviously we want women and part of those conversations, right? It's just like, I just loved how it was like, that's what education was. So you just talk about like the person to person, the like, you know, we're going to just inhabit space together and grow and learn. And, you know, like, it's totally different, you know, in some ways than maybe where we find ourselves today.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which, where, I don't know if this is a segue into the AI thing, but I'm just like, there's a huge difference there, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So,
right.
Yeah. Where's it all going? I think there's one of the things I realize is there is a human to human connection. That's, I do think, coming back to the incarnation and thinking theologically about a God who shows up as a human,
right?
The fullness of that God,
right, in
human form, to interact. If God could do it any other way, God probably would have,
right?
But he didn't, right. So I think that should teach us something about our formation,
right,
and our relationship to one another into that God.
Oh man, totally,
right.
You're singing from my hymn book, like that.
So what does it do for us? Where like, hey, I'm going to become an AI.
I mean, like, to me, the most obvious answer here is that it's like, because Jesus doesn't transform AIs, then it would be much harder for me to be transformed by Jesus through an AI versus being transformed through somebody who's a Jesus follower and has the Spirit at work transforming them. You know, like, there's sort of like a chain of when I talk about a chain of custody, right? But I mean, just Paul talks about that, right? I was just like, hey, like put into practice what you learned from me and like right? Like,
Yeah.
and it just seems to me that that's disrupted a little bit.
Yeah.
If we outsource one of those people to, an AI, which is not a person
Yeah.
and does not actually think, and, like that it's a text prediction machine. Like,
Yeah.
that's not, to me, I don't know. I think it's missing a structural element.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, you know what I think is there's something about let me try to communicate this as clearly as I possibly can. That is it the content of what I say that's important? So the argument made, look, if I could have something in translate or whatever, it's the content that's important, right? But what if it's actually not the content?
What if it's the medium, as our friend Marshall?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even as I think about scripture transmission, is it the scriptures themselves that are some like divine kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or is it the actual engagement of me with the scripture? Relationship with another, right? That is the dynamic of what the Spirit does, right?
Yeah.
So I think I kind of think we might be duped in thinking that it's content that we're delivering, and really it's not the content, it's the relationship,
Oh my gosh. So I want you to come to my scripture and canon class and talk about this. Because I think evangelicals have to some extent, and some, I mean, evangelicalism is a huge tent, but like there are some views that actually might be similar to like Islamic views of the Quran in terms of inspiration and what the content and the text is.
Yeah.
Right now, I think those people, to be fair to them, would say something about like, well, no, it's the very Spirit of God speaking through that, right? So there's power, there's things like that, right? But yeah, no, like I think I previously would have been very much under the persuasion that it's like, oh yeah, like in fact, like like I don't even matter. It's just the content, like So and that's still operant in my mind as I plan courses, right? I'm like, what's the content they need here? So that's just a really big picture. But yeah.
And obviously, like I don't want to play like the Gideon's work of like putting Bible 100% and people have come to faith, right? My question is it that the Bible itself, or is it that as they open, they begin to interact with the living God, and it's that
well, let me play Lucifer's litigator here. So I'm an AI course, and I mean, isn't the AI going to do that for me? Like, right? Like, aren't I going to have that experience where it's going to point me to the Bible and then I'm going to read the Bible and encounter God? Like, isn't that fine then?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't fully know. Like I can't.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we weren't in the course. Like we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. But I do think yes, God uses all kinds of means, and all kinds of like corruption, even
a donkey,
in order to be able to have people engage with Him and come in a relationship with Him. So I don't fully understand that.
Yeah,
I also wonder about the ongoing formation of if that becomes like if I continue to interact with that donkey, assuming that that's medium by which I engage with God, I might be ill-formed.
I see what you mean. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I even hear you trying to strike like not a mediating position, but just one where you can say like, okay, yeah, look, like, is that the totality of the educational experience? Is that a part of the educational? Like, what are we talking about with this, right? And
exactly.
And you're right to just say that it's like I don't want this to come across as us criticizing Dr. Robbins or Atlantic School of Theology. None of that, right? I mean, more just like, it's bringing that question forward, right? Absolutely. Which is, like, how are we inhabiting this space, given what we believe about theological education and the modern, predicament we find ourselves in?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then that's amazing. Yeah. What else?
That's a good question.
Like anything else on your mind or your heart?
Yeah, let me check. Let me check and see if there's. I mean, the last question is, where's it all going?
Yeah. Well, actually, and that was a question I did want to bring up, which was just when you talked about the overlap between the church and the academy.
Yeah,
and just the way, like, theological education is falling on hard times, has been for some time.
There's an anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. Is this going to be something where a need will actually create an opportunity for the church to begin stepping into that place, of formation. Like I think about our co-vocational project with the seminary, right? Like just looking at, is this going to be shifting more away from the ivory tower model?
Yep.
And back into the pew. What do we think?
Yeah, and I think we are seeing that movement.
Yeah.
Like we are seeing more and more churches trying to do in-house what they would have sent students off to Bible colleges or seminaries to be able to learn.
Right.
And I think time will tell. The challenges there are the time that it takes to be able to prepare well and and to do those things. But that was the early movement, like in a lot of contexts. It was mentoring, like even physicians, how they were trained and educated.
Sure.
It was a mentoring kind of model.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let me problematize this for a minute, and I hope I can get the words for it. But is something like this happening where, like, okay, churches send students, parishioners to seminaries.
Yes.
And then in seminary, they get educated.
Yeah.
But they realize in their education that like the world is big and complex and different. And it wasn't quite like my home church, And so I come back and then the church doesn't recognize me because I've actually been educated and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, so now is it like, well, churches are like, okay, well, we don't trust you to do that because we want our own version. So we're going to keep it in house, like kind of insular, like if I could draw an analogy, this will be problematic, but like to homeschooling, like, right. Where it's like,
but full disclosure, we homeschool our kids for a few years.
And I have nothing but respect for homeschoolers. Right. I think like, I'm thinking of homeschooling when I was growing up. So like, and that experience was very different because I think there was a lot of like satanic panic in like the 90s and stuff. Right. And so like people were very afraid. And then it became like this kind of like, let's just guard and not, like, I guess, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so is that going to yield to more parochial kind of insular models of not even education, but more just training, like, right? Like, this is how we do it. I don't know anything.
100%. Yeah. Because I think there might be an interest in practical skills. Ensuring people have the practical skills. There likely will be an interest in making sure these people have good hearts. And, are oriented. I struggle to think about how academically rigorous it's going to be.
Sure.
Given, and so I think that, and then the kind of like if we want to say like, I'm thinking about the 4 pillars of the human side of things, right? Like are we becoming more gentle and things like that?
Right.
That will likely be part of it. So I think the academic, and that's the expanding of the mind. Right. That allows us to be able to, like, I just think about like, I was on a military training course and there were Muslims, there was a Jewish rabbi, like an opportunity to just to connect with them as friends and as like colleagues.
Awesome.
Just getting to know. And I think that the challenge becomes as you are within your own very small sphere. How do you enlarge? How do you get to know and rub shoulders with people that are very, really different than you? And maybe that's part of the curriculum, which would be wonderful.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think you're right in that, if in fact this is where things begin to move, there is a need, an opportunity for us to ask and answer that question of like, then what does a robust theological education look like within the church? And would maybe require us to say, okay, well, we do need some of these elements that if we can't afford a seminary or don't have time, how are we going to inculcate some of those elements that they'd be picking up there in the church, right?
Absolutely.
So I think if it's thoughtful, right, and then there's great opportunity for that, right?
For sure.
I feel it's like scary as an educator in a professional quote unquote context that it's like, oh yeah, like, but then again, I'm like, well, we need to do this well. And so wherever we can, I think is going to be the place that we put the emphasis, but
absolutely.
But
you're 100% right. Like typically students coming to like a Bible college or seminary context, you're going to rub shoulders. You're going to chapel, people that you're going to,
an Arminian,
it's very Calvinist, already like, oh wow, this is not how we worship, or that professor is from a different tradition where you're from, and if you're not exposed to that, and then even thinking about like a non-Christian quote unquote curriculum, and learning from people that aren't followers of Jesus. You know, and maybe you got that in high school or whatever, and that's fine. But just to learn, think critically.
Totally.
You know, and also recognize that there's good things that are taught by people that aren't followers of Jesus too. Right?
Yeah. So is this something like, as a seminary, are we doing this? Like, do you know what I mean? Are we talking with churches about this to equip them well to be thinking about what they need to be doing to train educate the next generation?
Yeah. I think we're trying to. Yeah. Like, I think, and I think it's happening a bit at the undergraduate level and the connection with the church. For us, it's more, we're dealing with adults, right? So in the seminary, it's like people that are already relatively formed. And so now they are looking to prepare themselves. And so I think what I'm trying to do, or what we're trying to do, is help them learn not only academically, but also learn some of the skills. And of course, as much as we can, remind them of the formative aspects of just becoming a good human and the disciplines and those sorts of things. But it's hard. That's the hard part, is because we only get them for a very limited amount of time. But there's only so much we can do as a seminary, because it's non-residential, right? A lot of our students are off campus, and that's the kind of secret sauce of undergraduate institution. When you get students converging, and living together, doing this transfer, absolutely, enculturation that you're talking about.
Totally, yeah. It's hard not to think of that as the gold standard, right? But you know, I did think it's worth pointing out that it's like, I think this is something that as a seminary we're trying to speak to in, like, so we had a retreat this last spring, which was great. I thought, like, that even personally was very moving, you know. But then also just trying to incentivize in-person attendance, right? Lowering costs for in-person.
We have our lunches. Every time we have, and we try to clump our mods together.
So that gets people rubbing shoulders.
You got it.
And
then we do our lunches. And so it's all of that is an attempt just to get students interacting, mingling outside the classroom. Build relationships.
And I like that, because I think what it grants is that it's like it's like we're calling people up to that, right? Because it's hard. We don't naturally do that. Like, I mean, if it were up to me, okay, so I did my MDiv, and one of my biggest regrets in a way is that it's like I did it at distance, and like I did, you know, there's a couple screen faces that, you know, I feel like I know about, like, but I did that because it was easier for me, and it wasn't as expensive, and like, you know, but I really do feel like I missed out on a lot, you know, and so like, gently calling people to that, right? Realizing that I know there's a premium up front, but like, as Albert Borgman would say, like, the good is in the burden, right? As we take that on, that's where you find the real gold. So
absolutely.
Beautiful.
That's a good word.
Okay. So enroll in Briarcrest Seminary and come and be formed theologically.
Absolutely.
All right. See you next week or whatever.
That's right.